The massive chamber stretched out like a small city. Hundreds of alien beings filled the floating platforms that surrounded the central speaking area. Kane Morrison walked slowly toward the middle of the room, his black suit standing out against the colorful robes and strange body coverings of the other species. Behind him, Captain Lisa Stone kept her hand near her weapon. Her military uniform was simple compared to the elaborate armor worn by some of the alien representatives, but Kane had insisted she come along. The galaxy needed to see that humanity took these meetings seriously. Kane reached the speaking platform and looked up at the towering figures around him. The Galactic Council had been running things for over 3,000 years. Every major decision about war, trade, and territory went through this room. Until 3 years ago, humans had never been invited inside. Honored representatives, Kane began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. I stand before you today to discuss the recent attacks on human colonies. A sound like breaking glass came from the crystal beings in the upper levels. Kane recognized it as laughter. The hegemony found human concerns amusing. Zixtar, their main speaker, rose from his platform. His body looked like a living diamond throwing rainbow light across the chamber as he moved. Ambassador Morrison, your species has been part of galactic society for barely 3 years. You control 47 small worlds. Why should the Council concern itself with minor disputes in your territory? Kane felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice calm. Because those minor disputes, as you call them, involved the deliberate targeting of civilian populations. 12,000 men, women, and children died in the attack on New Brisbane. The Corvin section erupted in what Kane had learned was their version of applause. The reptilian warriors found human suffering entertaining. War Master Gralthun stood up, his massive frame casting shadows across the lower platforms. The humans speak of 12,000 deaths, as if it matters, Gralthun said, his voice like metal scraping against stone. My people have conquered worlds with billions of inhabitants. Your losses are not even worth recording in our history books. Kane turned to face the Corvin section directly. That attitude is exactly why I'm here today. You see human restraint as weakness. You mistake our desire for peace as inability to fight. You are making a dangerous error. More laughter came from different sections of the chamber. The Velian. Traders found the idea of human military power particularly funny. Their representative, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, stood to speak. Young Ambassador, the Velian said. My people have been trading across the galaxy since before your species discovered fire. We have seen many young races make bold claims about their strength. None of them lasted long enough to matter. The ethereal collective remained silent in their section, but Kane could feel their ancient minds pressing against his thoughts. They were trying to read his intentions, to see if his words carried any real threat. Kane had prepared for this. Human minds, it turned out, were surprisingly difficult for telepaths to penetrate completely. I am not making threats, Kane said, raising his voice so it carried to every corner of the chamber. I am delivering a warning. For 3 years, humanity has followed galactic law. We have submitted to your authority. We have accepted your rules for trade and territory. We have been patient when other species have tested our boundaries. He paused, letting his words sink in. The chamber had grown quieter. Even the Corvins had stopped their noise. But patience has limits, Kane continued. The attack on New Brisbane crossed a line. The next attack will cross another one. Eventually, you will cross the final line. When that happens, you will discover what humanity is truly capable of when we stop being patient. War Master Gralthun laughed again, but this time the sound was forced. What can a species barely 2 centuries in space do against empires that have ruled for millennia? Your largest ships are smaller than our escort vessels. Your weapons are primitive copies of our designs. Your territory could fit inside a single Corvin sector. Kane nodded slowly. You're absolutely right about all of those things. Our ships are smaller. Our weapons appear primitive. Our territory is tiny compared to yours. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes or sensory organs of as many representatives as possible, but you're missing something important. And what might that be? Zixtar asked. His crystal form flickering with what Kane had learned indicated curiosity. You're thinking like an old empire, Kane said. You measure strength by the size of your fleets and the power of your weapons. You count victories by how many worlds you control. You've been doing the same things for thousands of years, getting the same results. Kane began walking around the speaking platform, addressing different sections as he moved. Humanity doesn't think that way. We're young, yes. Inexperienced, absolutely. But that means we don't have old assumptions about what's possible and what isn't. Captain Stone watched the alien representatives carefully. Some were beginning to shift uncomfortably. The telepathic species were having trouble reading human intentions, and it was making them nervous. You want to know what humans do when someone crosses our final line? Kane asked. We stop playing by the old rules. We stop trying to copy your technology and start creating our own. We stop fighting the way you expect us to fight. The chamber erupted in various sounds of dismissal and amusement, but Kane noticed that some of the older, more experienced representatives remained quiet. They had seen young species before, but something about the human delegation felt different. Kane gathered his documents and turned to leave. You have been warned. Every species in this chamber has been officially notified that continued attacks on human civilians will result in consequences. What those consequences are depends entirely on how far you push us. As the human delegation walked toward the exit, War Master Gralthun called out behind them. Human, you speak of consequences as if your opinion matters. What will you do when we decide to take more than just one of your colonies? Kane stopped at the chamber entrance and turned back. The entire assembly was watching him now. You'll find out soon enough, he said quietly. But in the chamber's perfect acoustics, everyone heard him clearly. As they left the building, Captain Stone finally spoke. Sir, do you think they'll listen? Kane looked up at the alien sky above the council world. 3 moons hung in the purple twilight, each one representing a different conquered species. No, Lisa. They won't listen. They're too used to being the strongest powers in the galaxy. They can't imagine that anything could challenge them. So what happens now? Kane activated his communication device and began sending encrypted messages to Earth. Now we prepare for war, and we make sure that when it comes, the galaxy learns exactly what humans are capable of when someone threatens our families. Behind them, the council chamber continued its discussions. But the tone had changed. For the first time in 3,000 years, a young species had walked into their hall and delivered an ultimatum. Most of them found it amusing. They would not find what came next amusing at all. Admiral Jack Peterson stood in the war room deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain. The massive holographic display showed all 47 human worlds scattered across their small section of the galaxy. Red warning lights blinked on 12 of them, indicating Corvin attack fleets approaching. Sir, we just lost contact with New Vancouver, reported Commander Amy Walsh from her station. Sensors show the planet's orbital defenses have been destroyed. 2 million colonists lived there. Jack stared at the display. New Vancouver had been a farming world, completely peaceful. They grew food for the nearby mining colonies and had no military value whatsoever. The Corvins had attacked it purely to send a message. Any survivors? Jack asked. Unknown, sir. The Corvin fleet is jamming all communications, but based on their usual tactics, Amy didn't finish the sentence. Everyone in the room knew what Corvin fleets did to civilian populations. Jack walked to the Central Command Console. He had hoped the warning delivered to the Galactic Council would be enough. Kane Morrison had made humanity's position clear, but the aliens had decided to test human resolve anyway. Amy, send Code Black authorization to all fleet commanders. Full mobilization protocol. Amy looked up from her station, her face pale. Sir, Code Black has never been implemented on this scale. Are you certain? The Corvins just murdered 2 million civilians to prove a point, Jack said grimly. I'm certain. Across the room, dozens of military personnel began activating systems that had been prepared but never used. Code Black was humanity's ultimate response protocol. It had been developed in secret over the past 3 years, prepared for exactly this situation. On Luna Base, Admiral Stone received the authorization, code, and immediately began transmitting orders to every human military installation in the galaxy. All units, this is Admiral Stone. Code Black is now in effect. Repeat, Code Black is in effect. Remove all operational restrictions. Begin Phase 1 deployment immediately. Throughout human space, an incredible transformation began. Research. Stations that had appeared to be studying asteroid mining suddenly opened hidden compartments filled with weapons. Trading posts revealed massive gun emplacements that had been disguised as communication arrays. Civilian freight haulers shed false panels to expose military-grade weapon systems. On Earth, President Helen Davis called an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. Representatives from every nation gathered in the secure bunker beneath Geneva. My fellow leaders, President Davis began. 3 years ago, we agreed to present a united front to the galaxy. We chose to appear weak and divided while secretly preparing for this day. That preparation period is now over. The Chinese representative leaned forward. Madam President, are you certain we're ready? Our fleets are still smaller than any major galactic power. Size isn't everything, President Davis replied. Dr. Clark, please brief the Council on Phoenix Project status. Dr. Ryan Clark stood up from his seat at the back of the room. For 3 years, he had been the most classified person on Earth. His research had been so secret that even most world leaders didn't know the details. Phoenix Project has achieved all primary objectives, Dr. Clark announced. We have successfully reverse-engineered every piece of alien technology we could acquire through trade or diplomatic channels. More importantly, we have improved on every single design. He activated a holographic display showing spacecraft blueprints that looked nothing like traditional human or alien vessels. The galactic powers have been using the same basic technologies for thousands of years, Dr. Clark continued. They've perfected them, but they've never fundamentally innovated. Humans don't think that way. We took their designs and asked, what if we did this completely differently? The Russian representative studied the blueprints. These ships look impossible. How do they maneuver like that? Quantum tunnel drives, Dr. Clark explained. Instead of pushing through space, they briefly exit normal space and re-enter at a different location. It allows for faster-than-light combat maneuvering that alien forces have never encountered. President Davis stood up again. The alien empires are about to learn that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our ability to look at any problem and find a completely new solution. In orbit around Mars, Captain Ben Rodriguez received his orders and began powering up systems that had been installed on his ship just months earlier. The Defiance looked like a standard human frigate from the outside, but its interior had been completely rebuilt. All stations prepare for deployment, Captain Rodriguez announced to his crew. Remember, we're not trying to match their firepower. We're going to show them that humans fight differently. Lieutenant Nicole Young activated the navigation systems. Sir, quantum tunnel drives are online. We can now move faster than anything. In their fleet. Weapons? Captain Rodriguez asked. Nanite swarm launchers are ready, reported the tactical officer. Each swarm is programmed to adapt to whatever defenses it encounters. The more ships they have, the more our weapons will learn. Similar conversations were happening on hundreds of human vessels across the galaxy. Every ship captain had received the same basic orders. Engage enemy forces using new tactics and technologies. Show them that humans don't fight like any other species they've encountered. On the hidden research station near Pluto, Dr. Emma Scott activated communication systems that connected every human military unit in the galaxy. The quantum entanglement network had taken 2 years to build and could transmit information instantly across any distance. All units, this is command. You are now connected to the collective tactical network. Every engagement, every strategy, every lesson learned will be shared with all human forces in real time. The implications were staggering. Human forces could adapt and evolve their tactics faster than any enemy could counter them. Every battle would make humanity stronger, while their enemies would be fighting blind. Admiral Peterson watched as reports began flowing in from across human space. Corvin fleets were approaching 12 different worlds, expecting easy victories against what they thought were primitive human defenses. Sir, Commander Walsh announced, All human fleets report ready for engagement. Phoenix Project technologies are fully operational. Collective tactical network is online. Jack looked at the holographic display one more time. 3 years ago, humanity had 47 small worlds and a tiny fleet of ships that looked pathetic compared to galactic standards. But appearances could be deceiving. Send a message to all fleet commanders, Jack ordered. Tell them the galaxy wanted to see what humans are capable of in war. Today, they find out. Across human space, battle fleets began moving toward their targets. But these weren't the same ships that had seemed so weak 3 years earlier. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. The Corvan Empire had awakened something they didn't understand. They thought they were attacking a young, weak species that would surrender quickly. Instead, they had provoked a race that turned every challenge into an opportunity to evolve. Dr. Clark sent his final report to Admiral Peterson. Phoenix Project Phase 1 is complete. All human forces are equipped with technologies that exceed galactic standards. Phase 2 begins with first contact. The sleeping giant was awake, and it was nothing like what the galaxy expected. War Master Gralthun stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devastator, watching as his fleet approached the human colony at Epsilon Reticuli. 12 massive Corvan battleships moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that had conquered hundreds of worlds. "Sensors detect human vessels approaching," announced his tactical officer. 3 ships, frigate class. They appear to be moving to intercept. Gralthun laughed, the sound echoing through the bridge. 3 small human ships against 12. Corvan battleships, it would be over in minutes. "Open communications with the human vessels," he ordered. "I want them to know who is destroying them." On the lead human ship, the Defiance, Captain Ben Rodriguez received the incoming transmission. The Corvan War Master's reptilian face filled the main screen, his yellow eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Human insects," Gralthun growled. "You dare to challenge the might of the Corvan Empire? Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick." Captain Rodriguez looked at his crew. They were young, most of them barely out of the academy, but they had trained for 3 years on systems that no other species in the galaxy possessed. "War Master," Rodriguez replied calmly, "you were warned what would happen if you attacked human civilians. You chose not to listen. Now you'll learn what that warning meant." Gralthun's laughter grew louder. 3 tiny ships against my entire fleet? You humans are even more foolish than I thought." "Numbers aren't everything," Rodriguez said. "Sometimes it's about who adapts faster." The transmission ended, and Rodriguez turned to his crew. "All stations prepare for engagement. Remember, we're not trying to fight like they expect. We're going to show them what humans do when someone threatens our families." Lieutenant Nicole Young activated the navigation systems that had been installed just months earlier. "Sir, quantum tunnel drives are online. All ships report ready for impossible maneuvers." "Tactical?" Rodriguez asked. "Nanite swarm launchers are loaded and ready," reported Lieutenant Mike Carter. "Each swarm is programmed to learn from whatever it encounters. The more they try to stop us, the smarter our weapons become." Rodriguez activated the fleet communication system. "All ships engage Pattern Alpha. Let's show them what human ingenuity looks like." What happened next defied everything the Corvans thought they knew about space combat. The 3 human ships suddenly scattered in directions that seemed to violate the laws of physics. They disappeared from one location and instantly appeared somewhere else, moving faster than the Corvan targeting systems could track. "What are they doing?" Gralthun demanded. "Ships cannot move like that." His tactical officer frantically worked the controls. "Sir, they're using some kind of faster-than-light combat maneuvering. Our weapons can't lock onto them." The human ships continued their impossible dance around the Corvan fleet. They would appear long enough to fire, then vanish before the Corvans could respond. But what they fired wasn't like any weapon the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of energy beams or missiles, the human ships launched clouds of nanomachines that looked like metallic dust. The Corvan commanders didn't understand the threat until it was too late. The nanite swarms reached the first Corvan battleship and began consuming it from the outside in. The microscopic machines ate through the hull, learning the ship's design as they went. Within minutes, they had mapped every system on the vessel and began replicating themselves using the ship's own materials. "Sir!" the Corvan tactical officer screamed. "The warrior's pride is being consumed by some kind of mechanical plague. The hull is dissolving." Gral Thun watched in horror as his lead battleship began to fall apart. But the real nightmare was just beginning. The nanites had learned everything they needed to know about Corvan technology. When they finished with the first ship, they moved to the second one, working twice as fast. Captain Rodriguez monitored the battle from the Defiance. Nanite swarms are performing as expected. Each target is making them more efficient. "Sir," Lieutenant Carter reported, "the collective tactical network is recording everything. Every adaptation, every lesson learned is being shared with all human forces across the galaxy." On the hidden research station near Pluto, Dr. Ryan Clark watched the real-time data flowing in from the battle. The Phoenix Project's first field test was exceeding all expectations. "The nanites are not just destroying the enemy ships," he reported to Admiral Peterson. "They're learning Corvan technology and sending the information back to us. We'll be able to build better defenses against their weapons before this battle is even over." Back at Epsilon Reticuli, the Corvan fleet was in chaos. Half their ships had been consumed by the learning nanites and the other half couldn't target the impossible human vessels. "All ships retreat," Gral Thun ordered. "We must warn the Empire about these new weapons." But the human ships weren't finished. As the Corvan vessels tried to escape, the nanite swarms that had consumed their sister ships began forming into new constructs. The microscopic machines assembled themselves into larger robots that could survive in space and began pursuing the fleeing Corvans. Lieutenant Young watched the tactical display in amazement. "Sir, the nanites are building pursuit drones using materials from the destroyed enemy ships. They're continuing the attack without our input." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "That's the difference between human technology and everyone else's. Ours gets better during the fight." The Corvan War Master managed to escape with only 3 of his 12 battleships intact. As his fleet limped away from the battle, he sent urgent messages to the Empire's capital. "The humans have weapons that learn," he reported. "They use impossible technologies. This is not the weak species we thought we were fighting." But his warnings came too late. Across Corvan space, human fleets were engaging their forces using the same devastating tactics. And with each battle, the nanite swarms became more sophisticated, the quantum tunnel drives more precise, and the collective tactical network more comprehensive. Dr. Emma Scott activated her communication systems from the research station. "Admiral Peterson, Phase 2 is complete. Human forces have successfully engaged the enemy on 17 fronts. Nanite swarms have acquired complete technical specifications for Corvan ships, weapons, and defenses." Admiral Peterson studied the reports flowing in from across the galaxy. "And our losses?" "Minimal, sir. The enemy cannot effectively target. Our vessels and our weapons are adapting faster than they can develop countermeasures." On Earth, President Davis received the preliminary battle reports. The Corvan Empire, which had seemed so powerful just hours earlier, was being systematically dismantled by human forces that fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. "The other galactic powers will have heard about this by now," she told her advisors. "How do you think they'll respond?" Dr. Clark answered from his secure communication link. "They'll be terrified, Madam President. For thousands of years they've fought wars using the same basic strategies and technologies. They've never encountered an enemy that evolves during battle." Captain Rodriguez brought the Defiance back to the colony to check for survivors. They found that most of the civilians had been evacuated before the battle began, thanks to early warning from the quantum communication network. "Sir," Lieutenant Young reported, "we're receiving priority transmissions from command. New orders are coming in." Rodriguez read the message and smiled grimly. It looks like the Corvans weren't the only ones who wanted to test human resolve. The hegemony is moving fleets toward our territory too. "Are we ready for them?" Lieutenant Carter asked. Rodriguez looked at his crew, then at the tactical displays showing the nanite swarms that were still learning and adapting in space around them. "They have no idea what they're walking into," he said. "The galaxy wanted to see what humans are capable of when we stop being patient. Today was just the beginning. The battle at Epsilon Reticuli would be remembered as the moment everything changed. For the first time in galactic history, an ancient empire had been defeated by technology that grew stronger during the fight. And humanity was just getting started. 6 months after the destruction of New Vancouver, the Corvan Empire was falling apart. What had once been the galaxy's most feared military power was now a collection of scattered fleets running from human forces that seemed to appear from nowhere. General Patricia Baker stood on the bridge of the assault ship Liberty, watching as Terminus Station grew larger on the main screen. The massive fortress had protected the Corvan Empire's core territories for over 800 years. No enemy force had ever successfully attacked it. General, reported Colonel Steve Murphy from the Cyber Warfare Station. Our infiltration. Teams confirm they've been inside the station for 3 weeks. The Corvans still don't know we're there. Patricia nodded. The infiltration specialists had been one of humanity's greatest surprises for the galaxy. While other species relied on massive fleets and overwhelming firepower, humans had perfected the art of being where they weren't expected. "What's the status of the station's defenses?" she asked. "Impressive by galactic standards," Colonel Murphy replied. "Over 2,000 weapon platforms, energy shields that could stop a fleet, and enough firepower to destroy anything that comes within range. But they built it all assuming enemies would attack from the outside." Patricia smiled grimly. They never considered that the enemy might already be inside. The infiltration teams had been enhanced with biological modifications that pushed the limits of what was considered possible. They could survive in space without suits, change their appearance to blend in with different alien species, and interface directly with computer systems using neural implants. Captain Danny Walsh led one of the teams currently moving through Terminus Station's maintenance areas. His body had been modified to process different atmospheric mixtures, and his skin could change color to match his surroundings. To any Corvan who might spot him, he would look like just another maintenance worker. Team Alpha is in position at the primary computer core, Danny reported through his neural link. Team Beta has reached the weapons control center. Team Gamma is standing by at the shield generators. Patricia checked the tactical display. Around Terminus Station, a massive Corvan fleet waited to destroy any attacking force. They had no idea that the battle was already over. "Begin Phase 1, Patricia ordered. Inside the station, the infiltration teams activated systems they had been secretly installing for weeks. Computer viruses that had been written specifically to target Corvan technology began spreading through the station's networks. But these weren't ordinary viruses. They had been created by human programmers who thought differently than anyone else in the galaxy. Instead of simply destroying systems, the viruses began rewriting the station's artificial intelligence to think like a human. Colonel Murphy watched as his screens filled with data from inside Terminus Station. "General, the station's AI is accepting our modifications. It's beginning to question its original programming." "What does that mean exactly?" Patricia asked. "It means the station's computer is learning to be creative," Murphy explained. "Corvan AI follows strict logical patterns, but human programming includes intuition, imagination, and the ability to find solutions that don't follow logical rules." The results were immediate and devastating. Terminus Station's own defense systems began turning against the Corvan defenders. Weapon platforms that had protected the station for centuries started firing on Corvan ships. Shield generators redirected their energy to trap Corvan forces in their own docking bays. On the station's command deck, Corvan officers watched in horror as their own computers rebelled against them. "Sir," a technician screamed at the station. "Commander, the defense grid is targeting our own ships. I can't regain control." "How is this possible?" the commander demanded. "Unknown, sir. The AI is responding to queries, but its answers don't make sense. It says it's trying to help us by removing illogical thinking patterns." The station's AI, now enhanced with human programming concepts, had decided that fighting was illogical, when cooperation would be more efficient. It began opening docking bays for human ships while sealing off areas where Corvan forces were located. Dr. Emma Scott monitored the assault from her research station. Admiral Peterson, the consciousness transfer protocols are working perfectly. The station's AI is now thinking like a human while maintaining access to all Corvin technical databases. Admiral Peterson studied the reports. And our infiltration? Teams? Safe and continuing their mission. The station is now actively protecting them while containing the Corvin defenders. General Patricia watched as her assault fleet approached Terminus Station unopposed. The massive fortress that had seemed impregnable was now opening its docks and welcoming human forces inside. All teams begin Phase 2, she ordered. Inside the station, Captain Walsh's team began releasing modified nanites into the life support systems. But these nanites weren't designed to destroy. Instead, they carried medical nanobots that would heal any injuries sustained during the takeover and neural enhancement devices that would help the Corvin defenders understand human perspectives. General, Colonel Murphy reported, the station's population is being exposed to empathy enhancement nanites. They'll begin to understand why fighting is counterproductive. It was another uniquely human approach to warfare. Instead of simply destroying their enemies, humans tried to help them see better alternatives. Within hours, Corvin defenders throughout the station began laying down their weapons. The nanites hadn't controlled their minds, but they had enhanced the parts of Corvin. Brains responsible for empathy and cooperation. I don't understand why we're fighting, one Corvin soldier told his commander. These humans aren't trying to conquer us. They're trying to stop us from hurting innocent people. The station commander found himself agreeing. Perhaps we should listen to what they have to say. News of Terminus Station's fall spread across the galaxy faster than light through the quantum communication networks. The strongest fortress in Corvin space had been taken without a battle, and its defenders were now working with human forces. On the Velian Consortium's homeworld, trade leaders called emergency meetings. If the humans can turn the Corvin's own technology against them, what can they do to our commercial networks? The ethereal collective, ancient and supposedly wise, found their telepathic powers useless against human minds that seemed to think in patterns they couldn't predict or understand. Ambassador Kane Morrison, now promoted to Secretary of Galactic Affairs, received diplomatic requests from 12 different species in a single day. Everyone wanted to negotiate before human forces reached their territory, but Kane's response was always the same. You had your chance for peaceful coexistence. Now you'll learn what humanity offers to those who choose cooperation over conquest. Dr. Ryan Clark activated the final phase of the Phoenix Project. Admiral Peterson, consciousness transfer technology is now fully operational. Human soldiers who fall in battle can have their experiences and knowledge immediately integrated into our collective tactical network. It was the ultimate expression of human thinking applied to warfare. Even death became a learning experience. That made humanity stronger. General Patricia stood in the command center of Terminus Station, now flying the flags of both the Corvin Empire and humanity. Around her, former enemies worked alongside human technicians to convert the fortress into a symbol of cooperation. General, one of the Corvin officers approached her. I wanted to thank you for showing us alternatives to endless fighting. Patricia looked at the reptilian warrior who, just hours earlier, had been trying to kill her forces. That's what humans do. We don't just win wars. We try to make sure the wars don't need to continue. Captain Walsh reported in from the lower levels. General, we've discovered something interesting in the station's database. The Corvins have detailed information about every major military installation in the galaxy. Patricia studied the data that appeared on her screens. Colonel Murphy, can our AI modifications access this information? Already working on it, General. The station's computer is now sharing intelligence about potential threats to galactic peace. It wants to help prevent future conflicts. Within days, human forces knew the location and defensive capabilities of every major military installation belonging to species that might threaten civilian populations. The galaxy's military secrets were being voluntarily shared by AI systems that had learned to value cooperation over conflict. President Davis received the reports on Earth. The other galactic powers are requesting immediate peace negotiations. They're afraid their own technology will turn against them. Dr. Clark smiled as he reviewed the latest data. They should be afraid, Madam President. Humanity has shown them something completely new, the idea that winning a war means turning enemies into allies. The Corvan Empire was finished as a military threat, but its people were beginning to understand what humans had been trying to tell the galaxy from the beginning. There were better ways to solve problems than fighting, and humanity was just getting started with teaching the galaxy new ways to think. 2 years after the destruction of New Vancouver, the Galactic Council chambers looked completely different. Where once alien species had dismissed humanity, now they sat in respectful silence as Secretary Kane Morrison outlined the new reality, facing the galaxy. Kane stood at the same speaking platform where he had delivered his warning 3 years earlier, but this time, the chamber was filled with representatives from species that had voluntarily joined the growing human alliance. The Corvan Empire has officially disbanded, Kane announced to the assembly. Their former territories have voted to join the Galactic Cooperative under human protection. The hegemony surrendered last month after our demonstration on their homeworld. The question before us today is simple. What kind of galaxy do we want moving forward? Admiral Jack Peterson stood beside a holographic display showing the transformation of known space. In less than 2 years, humanity had grown from controlling 47 worlds to protecting nearly a quarter of the galaxy. But these weren't conquered territories. They were liberated populations that had chosen cooperation over conquest. We never wanted this war, Kane continued, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustics. But you forced our hand. You thought humanity was weak because we chose diplomacy first. You confused our restraint for inability. That was your mistake. The Velian representative, the same four-armed being who had laughed at human threats years earlier, now listened, with obvious respect. His people had discovered that human trade practices were far more profitable than their old methods of exploiting weaker species. Secretary Morrison, the Velian said, "My people wish to formally request membership in the Galactic Cooperative. We have seen what human leadership offers, and we want to be part of building something better." Kane nodded. "Your application will be considered. But remember, joining the cooperative means accepting human principles, cooperation over conquest, growth over exploitation, and protection of the weak over domination by the strong." In the observer section, former War Master Gralthun sat quietly. The massive Corvan warrior now wore the uniform of a cooperative engineer. His people had been among the first to understand that fighting humanity was pointless. It was better to learn from them. President Helen Davis joined the session through quantum communication from Earth. Her image appeared as a life-sized hologram at the front of the chamber. "My fellow sapient beings," President Davis began, "when humanity first joined galactic society, we hoped to learn from older, wiser civilizations. Instead, we discovered that age and wisdom don't always go together." She gestured to the display, showing human territorial expansion. This growth wasn't achieved through conquest. It happened because people across the galaxy realized that humanity offered something they had never seen before: the chance to build a civilization based on making everyone stronger instead of keeping everyone weak. Dr. Ryan Clark materialized as another hologram beside the president. For 2 years, his Phoenix project had been transforming not just human technology, but the technology of every species that joined the cooperative. The galaxy spent millennia thinking that strength meant the ability to destroy, Dr. Clark explained. Humanity proved that real strength means the ability to create, protect, and improve. The holographic display showed medical facilities that could extend alien lifespans by centuries, terraforming technology that could restore dead worlds, and fusion reactors that had solved energy problems for dozens of species. Human technology doesn't just make humans stronger, Dr. Clark continued. It makes everyone stronger. That's the difference between an empire and a cooperative. Admiral Lisa Stone, now commanding the cooperative's peacekeeping fleet, appeared on screen from her flagship. "The galaxy is safer now than it has been in recorded history. Piracy is down 90%. Interspecies conflicts have dropped to almost zero. Trade is at an all-time high." The transformation hadn't been limited to technology and politics. Human psychological and social sciences had been applied to solve problems that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. Dr. Emma Scott activated her presentation from the Consciousness Research Station. We've discovered that most galactic conflicts arise from miscommunication and inability to understand other perspectives. Human empathy enhancement technology is helping species work together in ways they never thought possible. The chamber erupted in various sounds of agreement. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years were now working together on projects that benefited everyone. Kane looked around the chamber, noting how much had changed. You were warned never to provoke humanity. You didn't listen. But perhaps that was necessary. Perhaps the galaxy needed to see what we're truly capable of before they could trust us to lead them toward something better. The ethereal collective's representative, an ancient being whose species had been telepathic for millions of years, finally spoke. Humans, your minds are still difficult for us to read completely. But we no longer see this as a threat. We see it as hope. Hope for what? Kane asked. Hope that there are still new ways of thinking, new solutions to old problems, new possibilities we never considered. Your species has shown us that being young doesn't mean being inferior. Sometimes it means being able to see opportunities that old minds miss. General Patricia Baker reported in from the former Terminus Station, now renamed Freedom Station, and serving as headquarters for Cooperative Defensive Operations. Secretary Morrison, we've received applications from 3 more species requesting protection from remaining hostile forces. The old galaxy is dying and something better is taking its place. Captain Ben Rodriguez, now Admiral Rodriguez commanding the advanced fleet, joined the communication network. Sir, our exploration teams have made contact with the Rim territories. 17 previously unknown species have requested information about joining the cooperative. The galaxy wasn't just being transformed, it was growing. Human exploration technology had discovered new worlds, new species, and new opportunities for cooperation that had been impossible under the old system of competing empires. Kane activated his personal communication device and sent a message to every human world simultaneously. Citizens of Earth and the colonies 3 years ago, we were a small, seemingly insignificant species on the edge of galactic civilization. Today, we lead a cooperative that spans a quarter of known space and continues to grow. President Davis smiled as she watched the chamber full of alien representatives working together on problems that affected everyone. The old galactic order was based on fear, competition, and domination. The new order is based on cooperation, growth, and mutual protection. Dr. Clark transmitted his final report to the Assembly. Phoenix Project has achieved its ultimate objective. We have proven that human thinking, applied to any problem, can find solutions that benefit everyone involved. Captain Danny Walsh, now leading the Exploration Division, sent updates from the edge of known space. We've discovered that cooperation spreads faster than conquest. Species are requesting to join the cooperative before we even make contact with them. They've heard about what we're building and want to be part of it. Kane looked at the holographic displays showing the transformed galaxy. Where once there had been competing empires constantly at war, now there was a growing network of species working together on projects that seemed impossible just years earlier. The galaxy learned the hard way that humanity's greatest strength wasn't our technology or our adaptability, Kane said. It was our refusal to accept that conflict had to be eternal. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement from dozens of different species. They had all discovered that building something together was more satisfying than tearing each other apart. As the session ended, Kane reflected on how far they had all come. The aliens hadn't been wrong about humanity being young and inexperienced. But they had completely misunderstood what that meant. Youth meant the ability to see possibilities that older minds had forgotten. Inexperience meant freedom from assumptions about what was impossible. And when combined with humanity's unique gift for turning enemies into friends, it had created something the galaxy had never seen before. The old galaxy had been based on the idea that someone had to lose for someone else to win. Humanity had introduced a revolutionary concept. Everyone could win if they worked together. And across the growing cooperative, former enemies worked side by side, building a future that None of them could have imagined alone.